And I normally don't do breaking news, but this is something that I think is warrants bringing to your attention as quickly as possible. Because this morning there was a court hearing over in Alexandria, Virginia, in one of the Paul Manafort cases. Now you may not know this, but Mueller took Manafort to court in two jurisdictions, here in the District of Columbia and over in Virginia. Again, further evidence that Mueller was showing Manafort who's boss. He filed one set of charges in one jurisdiction and then stuck it to him with another set of charges in another jurisdiction. I think in this case in Alexandria related to bank and tax fraud. Now the judge in that case, Judge T.S. Ellis in Virginia, he's been on the bench a long time. He was appointed by Ronald Reagan, so he's been on there for decades, and he's seen it all. Especially if you've been on the court as long as Judge Ellis has been. And as according to the news stories, he challenged the Manafort case, he challenged Mueller, he suggested the special counsel was lying and just going after Manafort to get at President Trump. Pretty incredible stuff. According to the Politico, Josh Gerstein did the report. I don't see what relation this indictment has with what the special counsel is authorized to investigate. You don't really care about Mr. Manafort's bank fraud. What you really care about is what information Mr. Manafort could give you that would reflect on Mr. Trump or lead to his prosecution or impeachment. There you go, you had a federal judge call out Mueller for the dishonesty of his investigation. That people like Manafort aren't being targeted because of his crimes, allegedly. It's because of his association with President Trump. And this is the fundamental abuse of the special counsel process. It's what's troubling generally about many prosecutions at the federal level, where they go after people and come down on them with like a ton of bricks as they get others up the chain, or targeted people up the chain, so to speak. And I know when it happens to mafia figures and drug kingpins, people don't care much about it, but we've got to be sensitive when we've got crooks, when we've got the targeting of alleged crooks like Manafort that would never have otherwise happened but for their association with a political figure. And this is what the judge is calling out in terms of the Mueller operation. And it's something that is significant because, frankly, the judge has the authority to throw the whole case out if he doesn't like it. And he's demanding more information because the court is being told by Manafort that we've got authority to investigate this, but it's secret authority. And the judge says, oh, really? He said, this is what you're going to say. He says, I want the document telling you what authority you have. And he quotes the special counsel's office as saying, we said this is what the investigation was about, but we're not bound by it, and we were lying. So you may recall Rod Rosenstein had when he appointed Mueller, had a very narrow description of what Mueller was supposed to be investigating. Russia collusion with the Trump campaign. Now, Manafort's been indicted on all sorts of unrelated charges to that. His representation for Ukrainian organizations, his alleged mortgage fraud, bank fraud, tax evasion. Nothing having to do with Russia collusion. And this doesn't mean that Manafort's innocent of anything. It just means that there was no authority, the Justice Department had no good reason to be looking at him under the authority granted the special counsel. And what Rosenstein did was he wrote a memo 4 or 5 months after the fact, in August of 2017, granting Mueller this authority to investigate Manafort supposedly on these Ukrainian issues. Manafort had already been investigated by the Justice Department and Mueller himself. So this was an ex post facto and after the fact rationalization, a CYA memo papering the record to justify the improper prosecution of Manafort. That's what the judge is getting at, and the judge has demanded that memo. And the court and the pushback from the Mueller investigation is, well, you can't see it because there's national security information in it and it's secret. And the judges said, I think the quote is, "I'll be the judge of that." So now we have a federal judge calling out Mueller for the abuse of authority that Judicial Watch has been calling out since virtually day one. And I'm glad to see the president, he has a new lawyer, Rudy Giuliani, is also calling it out. Rudy Giuliani has said that Sessions should step in and shut it down. We've been saying the same thing for a year plus. And the president is concerned, he is not dealing with honest prosecutors in the sense that they're trying to get out the truth as opposed to just trying to get his scalp. And that's further indicated by the release of questions that Mueller has proposed to ask President Trump. There are 40 questions or several topics that he's looking at, and they're available online, and I encourage you to look at them. I don't need to read them to you here. But I can tell you they don't have much to do with Russia collusion. They have a lot to do with this so-called obstruction of justice crackpot theory that's being broached out there by the left and Democrats, and I guess the Mueller operation, which is a front for them at this point, that somehow the president obstructed justice by exercising his ability to fire people like James Comey, and for merely talking about firing others because he was upset with the way the Justice Department and the special counsel was operating. And a lot of the questions looks like Mueller is pursuing information raised in the Clinton-funded dossier. Mueller is still using the dossier to target Donald Trump. So you can imagine why the president and his lawyers are hesitant to sit down with this crowd. One expert says he looked at the questions, it would take them 2 days to get through this with the president. What is the crime that this investigation is investigating? The Mueller investigation. What is the crime they're investigating? No evidence of Russia collusion. There's certainly no evidence of obstruction of justice, and you just can't come in as a prosecutor and question a president of the United States to satisfy your curiosity or to pursue some sort of partisan agenda like impeachment. His testimony isn't needed. And if he doesn't back down, the president should fire him. Or tell the Justice Department to fire him. I don't, look, the goal is to impeach the President of the United States. That's the goal here. Mueller thinks he could indict him. He probably try to indict him, but there are constitutional questions there, significant. I don't think the President could be indicted at this point. So if Mueller is allowed to continue, because I think he's demonstrated, the operation has demonstrated the bad faith and the partisan nature and the bias, it's going to result in a report encouraging impeachment. And of course, if he fires Mueller, the left will go crazy and say they need to impeach President Trump. So he's danged if he does, danged if he doesn't. And my view is, do it and do the right thing, because it's not just about the president and impeachment. It's about people like Manafort, General Flynn, and others being improperly targeted by the Mueller operation. I don't know, there may be people around President Trump, maybe Manafort did things wrong and deserves prosecution. But I think he's only being prosecuted because he was campaign manager for Donald Trump for a time. And this is leverage, as a federal court judge has noted, to go after Trump. And I tell you, if a court gets that bee in his bonnet, that the prosecution of a government or a quasi-government official, in this case a political figure, is being done for improper purposes, the whole thing can be called off. So this is a significant development, a federal judge excoriating the Mueller operation, and I don't know, maybe Manafort will not get his request, the charges get dismissed, and this is just a judge yelling on the bench, and he backs off at the final issue, in the final ruling. But the fact it was said out loud by a federal court judge is a significant development in terms of a positive development for the rule of law and accountability.